Hey Paul's Care Team, this is Cancer Update 128. And just like my t-shirt says, I'm hoping that you can roll with me. So what happened after Cancer Update 127 was I got quite a few comments on there about a few things. And I want to talk about one of those things in particular, which is some people talked about their experiences with stoma reversals and how for some people it had really good results and they got that message across. In fact, I'd say the majority of people that talked about it did talk about how it had gone quite well for them, or it had gone initially badly, but they found a way to deal with it and now it's okay. There were a handful of people that wrote what I'd describe as fairly traumatic, I guess, descriptions about either their or someone close to them whose experience is traumatic, is really bad. I do recall one where the person talked about the person needing to rush to the toilet every 2 hours, 24 hours a day, including sleeping hours, which meant this person hadn't had more than 2 hours sleep since their reversal. And as a result, they were in a very, very bad state of mind and were very much regretting getting their stoma reversed. That and a couple of other responses distressed me a bit, and certainly hearing them say, please don't get a reversal, here's either my story or the story of someone I know, made me pause and decide that I wanted to get more information from more places. So what I did was this morning I had a Zoom call with my support network, which is PMPPals.net. So I'll just pop up there. If you do have PMP, this is a support network that is all we do is we talk about PMP. And if you join the Hope Zoom calls, you'll be hooked up with a bunch of people that have lived it and walked it. And Charmaine, who runs that group, I think and correct me if I'm wrong, Charmaine, I think you're a 27-year survivor of PMP. So the idea that it's not survivable is demonstrably incorrect. However, in the time that I've been a member of that group for, I guess now about a year, and in that time there have been some members that have passed away. So I do acknowledge that it absolutely can be a fatal disease. I also want to point out, though, that some people do survive it, and some people survive it really long term. So that's pretty cool. So what I did this morning on the Zoom call was I said to the group, hey, this has happened on my channel. I've got a small number of people that have said this. I'm about to have a stoma reversal. What are your experiences? And so I put it to the Brains Trust, basically. And they came back and they gave me just such a wealth of information that I feel compelled to share it with all of you. I primarily want those handful of people that said they are right now going through traumatic times to hopefully see this, and hopefully I'm going to give you some ideas for some really good questions for you to go to your doctor or pharmacist and ask those questions. And I'm really hopeful that I might be about to change your life. And as a content provider, that's actually pretty exciting for me, as you can imagine. So let's crack on. I've made up, I haven't done PowerPoint slides, but I've kind of done a bit of almost like a slide deck for you. So there are, broadly speaking, 4 different ways that you can address incontinence, shall we say, issues after a stoma reversal. And I'm not even going to cover things like adult diapers or anything like this. I'm actually talking about things that will actually stop you needing a diaper or stop you having urgent incontinence. So the first one, I'll just pop it up on the screen for you. The first one is opioid receptor agonists. So the way these work is they decrease the peristalsis. And the peristalsis is basically the squeezing effect of your bowels that pushes the contents of your bowel towards your rear end. That's peristalsis. So opioid receptor agonists decrease peristalsis and allow more time for liquid and electrolyte absorption. So the whole purpose, if we just go through the purpose of your intestines, the purpose of your small intestine is to break down your food into, in particular, amino acids or something else that your body can absorb. Because your body can't absorb carrots, but it can break it down into other amino acids and other chemical molecules that it can absorb. So the purpose of the small intestine is to break down food and grab out nutrients. The purpose of your large intestine is mainly just to reabsorb liquid, which is water, and electrolytes, which is salts and sugars, basically, right? So the small intestine is grabbing your nutrients. Then at the end of that, you might have quite a watery fecal matter. The job of the large intestine is go, well, I'm not going to waste that water. I'm going to grab that. And there's some salts and other things in there, some other electrolytes. I'm going to grab those too. And then after it's done that, it makes it to your rear end and your body basically says, now I'm finished with it, it's gone, right? So that's your small intestine's purpose and that's your large intestine's purpose. Now, opioid receptor agonists, they decrease the rate at which the matter is going through, in particular the large bowel, and by giving it more time, it allows more liquid and electrolyte to be pulled out of that matter, right? So that means, in effect, if you've got diarrhea, it'll put you closer to having a normal type stool. If you're having a normal type stool, it'll put you closer towards constipation. So I'm sure some of you have taken opioids and there's a warning there that says, please be aware that this may cause constipation. That's why, because it slows down the speed at which your gut is moving food through. However, if you're having watery stools, that's a great thing because you can then take various things that agonise opioid receptors and get a good result. Now, I just have to describe what agonists are, so stick with me. I did what I always do, and I looked up the etymology of agonist and also agony. It turns out it's Latin from Greek, and it has two meanings. It either means a competitor or it means an actor. So if you've ever watched a movie and you've heard people talk about the protagonist, pro or proto means first. So the protagonist is actually the first actor. And the first actor in a theatre or a movie is the hero. So the protagonist of a movie is the hero. The antagonist of a movie is the villain, okay? So in terms of movies and theatre, you've got these protagonists and antagonists. In terms of biochemistry, you have agonists and antagonists, and they're more like that idea of a competitor that is struggling, okay? So an agonist is a molecule that attaches to a binding site of a cell, and if you think of it like a lock and a key, it's got the key that fits the lock, so it turns it, and when it gets into the cell, it goes, dude, I'm here, so let's do whatever it is that you do. And the opioid receptor goes, well, I take opioids. And it goes, yeah, cool, I'm here, let's have opioids. And if it's a neurotransmitter in your brain, that might then produce you to feel like really happy or whatever. If it's an opioid receptor in your gut, it might mean, oh, well, I need to tell the guts to slow down. But in the cell, what it's doing is it's saying, I am agonizing you. Basically, I am asking you to compete. Do your thing. And it does it. An antagonist in that scenario is a molecule that comes along, sticks its key in the lock and goes, oh, it fits. And then it turns the lock and goes, oh, I'm into the house. And then it says to the owner of the house, hey, you are not going to do anything while I'm here. And you can't get rid of me for between a few hours or a few days, or maybe a few minutes, depending on how strong I am, right? That's what an antagonist does. It says, I own this cell and I'm not going to do anything with it, and no one else can stick their key in this lock while I'm here. And it's going to take a while before my key dissolves out of that lock. So right for now, you're doing nothing, right? So a good example of an antagonist And if we use the opioid receptor concept, there's two different molecules. One is called naloxone and the other is called naltrexone. And they are antagonists for opioid receptors. So you may have heard of naloxone as the brand name, I think, is Narcan. And if someone has had, for example, a heroin overdose, you can give them Narcan and they will very, very quickly come out of it. And what you're in biologically, what you're doing is you are putting molecules into their opioid receptors and blocking them so that any remaining opioid in their system can't then get in, because that binding site is already occupied, and they go, oh shit, oh, okay, oh, I better breathe now, and I'm out of my high, right? And that's naloxone, which is very quick acting. It's also very quick to cease its function. So I've never used it, but I looked up online. When you administer it, it's within a minute, it's activated. It only lasts for between 30 and 90 minutes though. So if you've got someone out of that overdose situation, you've got between 30 and 90 minutes to either get them to an emergency department or give them a second shot of naloxone. In contrast, you've got naltrexone. It's also an antagonist to the opioid receptors, but it takes about an hour to take effect, but the effect then lasts for between 24 and 72 hours, depending on the dose that you've given. So there's two examples of some antagonists. Now, coming back to the slide that I did, talking about opioid receptors that are good for people with, fecal incontinence is what it's called. But, let's talk about it. The first one is loperamide, which in Australia anyway is known as Imodium. And by the way, I've taken Imodium, and I took it before I had my bowel resected, and plenty of you watching this will have taken it. When I go to Indonesia, I always get barley belly really badly, and quite a few times. If I ever go back to Indonesia, I will definitely be taking Imodium with me, and plenty of you, I'm sure, have had that situation happen. Now, some of you are going to be reading this and thinking, really, Imodium is an opioid? Yeah, it is. The funny thing about the loperamide molecule, though, is it's unable to cross the blood-brain barrier, which means it does attach to the opioid receptors in your gut, but it's unable to attach to the opioid receptors in your brain, which means you get the gut effect, but you don't get the brain effect, which is great. So loperamide or Imodium, that's one way that you can address diarrhea or diarrhea-like symptoms. The second one, and I hadn't heard of this before today, except when I've watched like Elizabethan series on Netflix when they talk about laudanum. Anyway, this came up today in the Zoom call. Tincture of opium, which is what it's called in the United States. I've looked it up online, and in the European Union, it's called dropazole. Okay, from what I can tell, you can't get it in Australia, which is fine. And I've written down a note here: the opium tincture does cross the blood-brain barrier, but the therapeutic dose is very, very small. And that may also be the case that it can get through the blood-brain barrier, but not in great quantities. Certainly. When Charmaine was talking about it in the PMP Pals talk, she said she's been on it for over 20 years. She clearly is not a heroin addict by now, and she's never had to increase her dose. So were it to be at a level that was a drug of dependence, by now she would have needed to increase her dose after 20 years. And she's saying after 20 years, I still take this tiny amount of it and it works just fine. I do note you can't get it in Australia, so the TGA, which is the Therapeutic Goods Administration of Australia, obviously feels that it's, I guess, either a dangerous drug or an unnecessary drug for us to have in Australia. And as I go on, you probably agree that Australia is fine without having it. Don't forget that in Australia, you can get Tramadol, you can get Tapentadol, you can get all of these other painkillers that are actually opioids that have a side effect of slowing down your gut. So just because we can't get tincture of opium in Australia, don't worry, there's other things we can do. So that's the first class of things that we can do if we have a stoma reversal and we find ourselves in a pretty bad way. And by the way, in certain cases, as I pointed out, I was taking Imodium before I got my stoma. So, you know, that drug does exist and that's how it works. The second class I've got here is muscarinic acetylcholine receptor antagonists. Now, these decrease peristalsis and allow more time for the liquid and electrolyte absorption, just like the opioid receptors. Now, an example of this is diphenoxylate and atropine, which goes by the trade name of Lomotil. I did note something really interesting about Lomotil, which is that it's two different drugs, and there's a really good reason for that. So just reading here, note that the diphenoxylate is what decreases peristalsis. However, it can be abused in larger doses. The atropine is added to prevent abuse by causing unpleasant effects in larger doses. So I find that really interesting that they've deliberately added a second effect to stop you taking too much of it. And I can think of a couple of prescription drugs that I wish that had been done with years ago, because there'd be a lot more people that haven't accidentally overdosed if they had have done that. But, you know, it's great to see that with Lomotil, they have actually, if you like, nobbled it for the drug addicts, that you can only take it in small doses. So that's good. Pretty happy with that. And you can get Lomotil in Australia, so that's cool. Now, the third group is really, really fascinating. And I might just move over to the side because this is a fairly big graphic and I might have to put it on the whole side of the screen. So I'll just put myself over here. They are bile acid sequestrants. Now, the word sequestrant or sequestration, it's been in the news a bit lately when they talk about carbon capture and sequestration. So to sequester something is to grab it and own it, basically, right? So with carbon capture and sequestration, they're talking about getting carbon dioxide out of the oxygen, out of the atmosphere and injecting it into a geologic structure like a limestone or something like that, something that'll hold the carbon dioxide. Now, bile acid sequestration is basically a similar thing where you're going to grab the bile acid and then nobble it, right? You're going to make it inactive. So let's look at how this works, because I didn't know about this before today. I'm fascinated by it. And thank you to Roberta from PMP Pals for making me aware of it. And when we get into who it's best for, unbelievably, I am in the primary group of people that really can benefit from bile acid sequestrants. So let's carry on. So before I go any further, I'll just describe that your liver and gallbladder excrete bile acids into your small bowel to help digest fats. So basically what's happening there is your liver is able to produce bile. It squirts it out into your gallbladder, right? And there's a bile duct, and there's a common bile duct and a second bile duct. I forget the names. Basically, your liver squirts it out to your gallbladder. Your gallbladder then squirts it into the first part, the duodenum part of your small intestines, right? When your body has detected that you've eaten something fatty, right? So you eat something fatty, it goes down into your stomach, then it goes into your duodenum. Your body goes, oh, there's some fat. I'm gonna squirt some bile onto that. So it squirts bile onto it, and in someone that's got all of their body parts, what happens is that acid then dissolves the fat. Remember, the small intestines, the purpose is to dissolve the food and grab out molecules. So it's dissolving the fat into molecules that the body can then suck out of the side of the small intestine, mostly through a process called osmosis, and grab those nutrients, right? What happens though is the liver squirts in, it's not an exact science, so it just squirts in a bunch of bile salts, too much bile salts. So what happens is, when it gets to the end of the small intestines, and the last part of the small intestine is called the ileum, and the last part of the last part is called the terminal ileum. Now, in the terminal ileum, there are structures there designed to absorb any residual bile, right? So bile, or the reading that I said 95% of the bile salts get absorbed in the terminal ileum. So almost all of the bile, unused bile or unallocated bile, is absorbed in the terminal ileum. Now, the terminal ileum is connected to your cecum and the start of your large bowel. What would happen if you didn't absorb those bile salts there is when they went into the large intestine, and remember the large intestine's job is to absorb liquid. What it does is it goes, oh, what is this salt? What is all this acid in here? I hate it. So instead of taking water from inside the bowel and pushing it out, it does the opposite. It grabs water from outside the bowel and pushes it in because it needs to dilute this horrible acid that it's now detected it has in too much concentration. So it grabs water out of your body, chucks it into your large intestine, and that presents to the end user as either a little bit of a softer stool when you go to the toilet, all the way up to explosive diarrhea, right? So that can happen. When you have all of your body parts, there are some people that have, it's called BAM, which is bile acid malabsorption, BAM, if you want to look it up. What has happened for people in my situation is I don't have a gallbladder anymore. So my bile duct goes straight from my liver into my duodenum. I also don't have a terminal ileum, right? The middle of my ileum is attached to, in fact, my ascending colon because I've had what's called a right hemicolectomy. So what happens in my case is that bile is just dripping into my duodenum whenever it wants because it's not in the bladder, so it's not through a squirt process. It's just coming out of the liver whenever it comes out of the liver, right? And it's not getting any excess bile salts don't get reabsorbed at the end of the small intestine. So what happens in my case, or anyone that's actually had a right hemicolectomy, is those bile acids go into your large intestine, whatever's left of it, and they do irritate it, anywhere between a little bit and a heck of a lot. And what that does is it generates anywhere from a tiny amount of diarrhea to explosive diarrhea, okay? Now, how lucky we are that we have these products called bile acid sequestrants, because let's talk it through. Let's take that whole concept and I'll talk it through into these sentences that I wrote down earlier today. Your terminal ileum, the last part of your small bowel, is designed to reabsorb any excess bile acid and thus stop it from entering the large bowel. If you've had your terminal ileum resected, then this does not occur. As a result, your large bowel becomes exposed to any excess bile acids that are still present. This irritates the large bowel and fluids are subsequently excreted into the lumen of the bowel, of the large bowel. This presents as diarrhea. Bile acid sequestrants bind to the excess bile acids in the bowel and make them osmotically inactive. This then avoids these acids causing large bowel irritation, right? Interestingly, your body does not metabolize bile acid sequestrants. They just bind to the bile acids in the bowel and are completely expelled when you empty your bowels. So this is a medication that you can take that starts and ends its job in your bowels. It never gets into your blood system. It doesn't go to your brain. It doesn't go anywhere except, you swallow it. So it goes in your mouth, esophagus, stomach, gets to your small bowel, starts doing some stuff, gets to your large bowel, does a lot of stuff, and you poop it out. Unreal. So I didn't know about bile acid sequestrants before today, and man, am I glad I know about them now. So that's great. An interesting note on them, they are also used to treat high cholesterol. In terms of names, brand names. There's Colcevelum, I guess is how you say it. In the US, it has a brand name of Welchol. In the UK, I found it as Colestigel, and in Canada, I found it as Lodalis. I was not able to find it in Australia. In terms of bile acid sequestrants in Australia, what I did find was cholesterol hydrochloride, which in Australia has the brand name of Colestid. Okay, so it looks like Australia has done something different to the rest of the world. You know, we do that sometimes, just look at the kangaroo, and that's fine. I also, Roberta wanted me to point out that you can get it in it's tablet and drop form, but you can also get it as a powder, and Roberta was really keen for me to mention this, so here you go. So it is Cholestyramine powder, and I found that under the brand names of Prevalite Questran Light and LoCholest. So there you go. So yeah, bile acid sequestrants, isn't that interesting? I'll just go back over here and we'll go to number 4. Number 4 is dietary changes. So obviously if you consume foods that are going to give you diarrhea, like prune juice or having not one apricot but 40 apricots, then you are going to get diarrhea. If you take certain other foods that have a thickening effect, and off the top of my head, there's a bunch of them, but I know bananas is on the list, ripe bananas is on the list, and rice pudding is another one that's on the list. I think applesauce, weirdly, and pasta was another one. I'm not going to list out all of them because there are tons and tons of websites on the internet from really good sources that will answer that question for you. If you just type in foods to thicken output, or foods that cause diarrhea, you'll find one way or the other. And obviously, in my situation with a stoma and then getting a stoma reversal, there are certain foods, there are dietary changes that I need to make, and I accept that. So that's fine. So that's 4 different ways to treat difficult bowel situations that don't involve rushing off to the toilet or wearing an adult diaper or anything like that. The PMP Pals group were very clear in their messaging to me that it is solvable. They're actually aware of someone in their group that has their entire bowel system is 1/3 of their small bowel, and they describe that as the absolute minimum that you can have and still maintain life. And that person has been able to find a way to manage their situation through medication and diet. Now, I have I've got every part of my small bowel except for my terminal ileum. I've got more than half of my large bowel because I don't have my ascending colon because I've had a right hemicolectomy, and I don't have my sigmoid colon because I've had an anterior resection. But I do have my transverse colon, my descending colon, and I've got my rectum, okay? So I have more than half, I've probably got 2/3 of my large bowel, and I've got 95% of my small bowel. So I've got way more than some other people that have solved this. And now that I know that, I can see why Prof Morris was so confident when he said, "Paul, you're going to be fine. You're going to be continent." I now get that, and I now firmly believe it. I also firmly understand that definitely for the first 3 days, but possibly for the first 2 weeks, it's shall we say, going to be a shit show. It's going to be not pleasant, but I'm also now confident that will end. And normal bowel function can be restored. Either my body will do it on its own without any help, or I now know, I now know 4 different categories of ways to assist it if my body doesn't work it out on its own. So I came out of that meeting and I said this to the group. I said, my anxiety about my stoma reversal is now completely gone. I'm not anxious about it at all. I'm now very confident that I can solve any certainly any incontinence issues, but even any looseness issues. You know, I used to be a one a day kind of guy. It was always in the morning. So what would happen was I'd wake up, I'd have breakfast, I'd go to work, I'd have my coffee, I'd just finish my coffee and put my coffee cup down, and my body would say, Paul, time for the toilet. Because caffeine does that. That's one of the things caffeine does. And I'd just go, yeah, no worries. So I'd go to the toilet, come back, and I wouldn't need to go again until the same time the next day. And I was like that for years and years and years. Look, to be honest, I'd be happy if I went from being a one a day guy to being a 3 a day guy. That would be fine. What I don't want to be, and I now realise I don't need to be, is a 10 a day guy. There are absolutely treatments for people that are finding themselves going 10 times a day, or even 5 times a day. I think 5 times a day is too much. And I'm quite confident that if you're going 5 times a day, one of these 4 strategies, or a combination of them in all likelihood, will help you. So there you go. So I'm feeling pretty good. I wanted to share that information with all of you. I do want to point out I'm not a doctor or a pharmacist, or, you know, a biochemist or anything like that. So please don't take anything I've said as medical advice, but do take it as potential information that would feed a good question for you to ask of someone that is a medical professional. You know, information is power, and hopefully what I've done here is I've given you enough power to ask the right question to the right person to solve an issue that you might have. And if I do, please write it down in the comments. If being a content provider, there's, you know, you've got to think about what motivates me, and what motivates content providers. I realise a lot of the time it's financial, and I can tell you right now. I'll even look. It's probably time I told you the amount, because some people ask me, and I keep avoiding the question. I'll tell you right now. I make roughly 800 Australian dollars a month out of my channel. Right, 800 Australian dollars is about 550, I think, American dollars a month. It's not enough to live on. It's nice when it turns up in my bank account, but it's not enough to live on. And it's sort of, if I put it this way, it's not enough to encourage me to make crap content, if you know what I mean. Like, I've looked at some other content of some other providers and thought, you know, why did they make that video? There was really no informational message there. And the only plausible explanation I can come up with is because they have a following of 50,000 people, and people will click on that link, and then that person will get money. And based on my $800 a month, and, you know, the ratio of me to them, they're probably making $5,000 a month. So it's worth them to just make that crap content. I don't earn enough, and also it's just not in my nature to make crap content. What does motivate me is the thought of helping people. So when I was making car videos, I think it's quite obvious. It's like you're trying to work out how to change a window on your car because it's smashed, and I make a video showing you how to do that. So the connection between my video and helping you is very obvious. With this channel, it's a little less obvious, but it's also, well, it's certainly given me a bigger audience, I'll say that, but also possibly more large in its scope. You know, like helping you fix a smashed window on your Mazda is one thing, but showing you how to take a pretty simple medication and change your quality of life from being quite bad to being absolutely livable. You know, that's powerful. It's worth me making this video, put it that way. So yeah, look, if you have enjoyed this, and definitely if I've given you something that's going to allow you to have a conversation with a medical professional and hopefully improve your life, please write it down in the comments, because this is exactly why I make these videos. Anyway, I'm going to cry, so I better go. All right, click the like. Be great for you to click the like. and stay with my channel. Obviously, some really big things are going to happen soon. I've got a mixture of excitement and trepidation, and I've got anxiety for certain parts of it, but not the stoma reversal part of it. I'm no longer anxious about that. I'm more anxious about things like being off my antidepressants and being off my peripheral neuropathy meds, basically the recovery. You can see the videos, or hopefully you watched it at the time. You know, the recovery's hard. This is not easy. The CRS operation is called the mother of all surgeries. They call it the MOAS, M-O-A-S. And it's called the mother of all surgeries because, well, for a few reasons. One is because it's a minimum of about 10 hours to have an initial CRS plus HIPEC. I have heard of them going even to 16 hours. Mine was 13 and a half. It's also got a decent fatality rate. The fatality rate in Australia, at least at Prof Morris's ward in St George Hospital, the fatality rate's about 1.5%, which is it's significant. And if you remember when I had my operation, which was October 26 last year, on October 28, which also just happened to be Caroline. Oh no, I can't say that. Sorry, Caroline may have a special day on October 28. I had 2 collapsed lungs and a pulmonary embolism, and I did almost die. You know, I ran right around the edge of that 1.5%, and and I'm rolling that dice again. So I don't know whether that 1.5% is for all CRSs plus HIPEC or only initial ones. I don't know whether having a second one has a higher or lower fatality rate, but I'm going to imagine it's, I don't know. But I certainly feel like I'm taking another potentially fatal roll of the dice, put it that way. Like I really did almost die last time, and I'm signing my name on the dotted line for a very similar operation this time. I don't think it'll be 13 and a half hours because they won't be giving me a right hemicolectomy or an anterior resection. They've already removed my spleen, my gallbladder, my appendix, obviously. And the majority, whereas last time I'm guessing I had thousands of mucinous neoplasms in my abdomen, we think now I might have, tens, maybe even only 10 mucinous neoplasms in my belly, and that will certainly take less time to address. Although Prof has also said that he wants to do the HIPEC and the EPIC. I wasn't that surprised by him wanting to do the HIPEC because that'll address the seeding issue. I was surprised that he wanted to do EPIC because I thought that would be enough. But the guy, the guy is a respected guy in his field because a lot of his patients survive. He gets a good result, and maybe that's because he does things like doing EPIC, even if it is an abundance of caution, shall we say? So yeah, I'll take it. Other news. So in other news. Oh yeah, no, there's 2 other things I want to talk about. Sorry, this video is really going on. Congrats if you've made it this far in the video. I'm sure many of you have dropped off by now. In other news, I went to a friend's home gym yesterday and did pec deck, bicycle, balance ball and rowing machine. And may I say, that rowing machine, that is one heck of a workout. If you do rowing or used to do rowing, I tip my hat to you. That is a aerobically and anabolically a really, really hard thing to do. You have to be really strong and you have to have great stamina. I was puffing in no time, but that's what I wanted to do. So that was pretty cool. So yesterday I went to a friend's home gym. The day before that I did 50 push-ups. which I haven't done 50 push-ups in quite a while, and I was a little bit scared because I didn't want to get a peristomal hernia. So I only did, what did I do? I did 5 sets of 10. That was enough. The other thing that's happened is I changed my mind on how to get extra calories into my diet. So I'd initially said to you that I was going to eat lots of chocolate and ice cream and rum, was what I said to you. Plenty of you said, Paul, please don't do that. And mainly the reason you gave was you said because sugar feeds cancer. So let's talk that through because that's not quite correct. All cells need sugar or need glucose, or it's ATP, I forget what the acronym stands for. I'll write it down here. That's actually what sugar goes down to in your cells and gets used as that. But what happens in cancer cells is cancer cells metabolize sugar faster than non-cancerous cells in your body. That's actually how PET scans work. So what they do with a PET scan is they put radioactive sugar into your blood. That then goes out to all the cells. The cancer cells suck up that sugar faster than everything that's around it. So when you do a graph of the body, if you like, the points in your body that have cancer in them show up as metabolizing glucose really fast. So in effect, what the PET scan is trying to do is to map out the cancer, right? Now that's true for most cancers. Unfortunately, it's not true for mucinous adenocarcinomas, which is what I have. I have pseudomyxoma peritoni. It's a very rare cancer, and it's an adenocarcinoma. And adeno means gland, and they act differently. See, if you've been following me really closely, you might remember that when I did my PET scan, it came up negative. There was nothing on the PET scan. All that showed is that I don't have any secondary hard cancers. So I don't have cancer in my lungs or my liver or any of the solid organs. What it didn't indicate at all is whether or not I had cancer in my mucus, because I have mucinous neoplasms. So it was the CT scan where you could see them, but it wasn't on the PET scan where you could detect them, if you follow the difference there. So what I decided to do, I've decided instead of doing the chocolate and ice cream, I'm instead going to consume an extra meal. So what I'm doing at the moment is one of the big home delivery meal plan providers in Australia delivers meals to my house. And at the moment I have a breakfast, a lunch and a dinner. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have a breakfast, an early lunch, a late dinner, a late lunch that is actually a dinner pack, and then I'm going to have a dinner, so that I'm having more calories, but I'm actually having nutritious calories. But I want to be clear, I'm not doing that because I'm worried that sugar feeds cancer, because the cancer that I have doesn't metabolize sugar almost at all. It must metabolize some because that's what cells need to do to stay alive. But evidently it does it certainly no faster than non-cancerous cells, because it just doesn't show up on PET scans. So there you go. So yeah, I'm not having the chocolate and ice cream. Okay, I've gone on way too long. Just so you know, any content providers out there, when you make videos this long, they don't get viewed very much. When you make short ones, they get viewed a lot. So unfortunately, I have hamstrung this video in some ways. Anyway, click the like. I'm going to press stop and actually process this video. I'll talk to you again soon. See you later from Paul in Perth. Catch up.